Hello, my lovelies. I'm Ginny O, the author with no last name, and today I'm going to talk once again about Star Stable Online and go into the story. I'm an indie author, a development editor, a sometime peer reviewer, and a game developer. Disclaimer. There are spoilers for Star Stable and Harry Potter ahead. To be fair, when I kept saying, "That's another video," I was doing my best Elton Brown impression because unless there was deep interest, I don't want to spend all my time deconstructing Star Stable. If you haven't listened to my 2.5 hours of how not to make an MMO with Star Stable as the starring player, then I suggest you listen to that before listening to this, or at least the very last video. Then, when I was checking the 2015 Game Beats article, I ran across this gem from the CEO at the time, Gunnarson. It reads, "It's a girl's game, and that was a huge challenge in itself," Gunnarson said. "If it was just a game about horses, you might get bored. But there's a story in it, sort of like Harry Potter." Okay, there are two very major disgusting things going on in this comment. The first is sexist, and the other is, well, arrogance, and now in 2021, patently not true. Let's tackle the sexism first. A girl's game being a huge challenge. In the creative industry, especially among white cishet ableist men who dominate the creative industry of books and movies and video games, there is this prominent and established, as in this is older than dirt, misogynistic view women are the other. You cannot understand them, they are mysteries, and it has deep roots in the medieval beliefs that women simply couldn't control themselves. It was debatable they had souls, and so they weren't entirely human and fell to the temptation of the devil easily. Thus, women were more like property than people. There were no laws to protect them from family and spousal abuse. Worse were the witch hunts and ascribing women to following goddesses such as Hecate, and worshipping the devil for not taking husbands, practicing herbalism, being midwives, and taking care of their fellow women. The downfall of Anne Boleyn, and so on and so forth. This was also happening during Grecian times, so when I say older than dirt, I do mean older than dirt. This has led to many of our societal ills today, where women's work is degraded unless you're a professional. See professional chefs in fashion design, then it's lauded if you're a man. And women can't get paid the same amount of money for doing the same work, or can't get even the same type of opportunities as a man, and are also expected to take care of the home and rear the children on top of a full-time job. Thank you 1950s for piling on to this idiocy. It is a form of control. If women do not have access to proper money or healthcare or whatever, it is much less likely we'll ditch men. And I mean in a society where women fear being killed and men fear being laughed at, control is a huge issue. This has led to some very disgusting portrayals of women in books and media, and to the point of view of men being set as a standard is the gender the reader or movie watcher or video game player is supposed to relate and empathize with. No one wants to relate to a girl. Girls are weak and emotional and irrational. Look no further than George R.R. Martin's portrayal of 14-year-old Daenerys. And you can go to Tumblr, I think, where there's an entire section of men writing women badly for some very gross gems about how women are portrayed and described in media. And this is after editors have gone through them. Editors have confessed they have taken worse things out of these books. What is in these books is a compromise. In the publishing industry, Even the example Gunnarson uses here of Harry Potter, author Joanne Rowling couldn't publish with her first name on the cover because publishers were afraid boys wouldn't buy a book written by a woman, much less let Harry be Harriet. This attitude is even more blatant in the science fiction fantasy genre, where unless you are writing urban fantasy, don't bother with using your first name unless it's gender neutral, like Kim. Even then, I have gotten into arguments with urban fantasy enthusiasts who seem not to know the romance genre has strict standards about what can and can't be defined as paranormal romance, about whether or not urban fantasy authors like Patricia Briggs, Kim Harrison, Laurel K. Hamilton, and even Mercedes Lackey are urban fantasy. They have romance in their books. Romance is icky. They can't be part of urban fantasy alongside Jim Butcher and other male urban fantasy authors I don't read anymore because after reading their books and their descriptions of women, it makes me want to take a shower. I would dearly love to believe that these depictions aren't what the authors really think about women. But experience has led me to believe otherwise. If you want to be taken seriously as a science fiction and fantasy author and be female, you can't go by your first name, and you can't write icky romance into your stories. There's a reason I'm indie, writing slice of life urban fantasy with slow burn romance and werewolves and motorcycles and explosions. Men believe writing women is hard, and writing for women is harder still. Because we're aliens to fetishize, and we are no better than cardboard cutouts to hang the emotion of men upon, and thus easy to ignore, put into danger, enact violence, or kill. For your sanity, don't watch a lot of action movie trailers in a row. Even women have accepted the standard of men are default, and at times this can really mess up their own perceptions of themselves as a human being and as a woman. The fashion and dieting industries capitalize on this quite a bit. The cosmetic and bath industry still instill the pink tax. Healthcare knows next to nothing about women's or POC's health because all the studies have been done on white men. And women's interests, like romance and fandom and clothes, are all looked down upon with disdain for being materialistic and shallow. And our worth is boiled down to our mammary glands in room. Our wants and needs and humanity are ignored, and our real stories and our fiction are dismissed out of hand as hysteria. Even in the matter of perception, men is such a default that if there are 10 people in a room and 3 of them are women, men think half the room or more are women. It's a fact that women can dominate the emotional label industries, including teaching, nursing, and secretarial work. We are paid less than men. You want me to work poverty wages to keep your books? How about no? So, when you take it upon yourself as a company to make a game for girls, perhaps it'd be best if you didn't look at it as a challenge, instead made it like you'd make a game for boys. Because that is exactly how one should write women. They are people first, gender second. You give them the standards of having wants, needs, hopes, dreams, and flaws, and strengths. Then you can slap on a personality type from the Zodiac or Myers-Briggs, and then all of a sudden, man! It doesn't matter they're female. They are a person, just like you and me. I also have things in their pockets, because women deserve to have functional pockets. The same thing as women for customers. They are people first, gender second. And women like the same mechanics and games that boys do. We like things like guilds and factions and character classes and magic systems and story quests and farming and crafting and other life skills. You don't have to strip down a game and make it easy or dumb to make a game for women and girls. You can make a list of game mechanics, find out ones girls like the best, and apply, just like you would for boys. There, problem solved. This major problem of male being the default point of view to sympathize with is the reason I don't care Star Stable only has a female character option. I know there are those who are going, but boys like horses too, And, well, yes, I know. I have a nephew who loves horses. Boys can empathize with girls. It's good for them to empathize with girls, to see girls as human beings rather than the other. The younger, the better. The female protag isn't an issue for me. There needs to be more media with female protags. Why do females only get to do cool things in music videos? The portrayal of professional women in Star Stable is another issue entirely. We'll get there. Now, about if it was a game about horses, you'd get bored thing. Well, it is a game about horses, and I am incredibly bored because this quote unquote Harry Potter like story is nowhere to be seen. Let's delve into that. In the publishing industry, we have something called comparison books. Comparison books are books published within the last 5 years and not on the New York Times bestseller list. So comparing the story of your video game to a highly popular franchise is just not done. Because they are looking for books as a debut, they think you can make around the same amount of money and success. You compare yourself to this huge book series with billions in profit from sales and movie rights and merchandising, the agent is going to throw you into the reject pile. And then, well, Star Stable is nothing like Harry Potter. Remember how I said that games need a core value and, well, there's generally a fantasy tagline to go along with it? This is true of most media and even fashion houses. There's this core idea that the entire brand revolves around. Harry Potter's can be summed up by Hagrid. You're a wizard! Harry Potter gets a letter where he finds out he's a wizard, and he's whisked off to wizarding school to learn magic, and is manipulated by the headmaster into fulfilling a chosen one prophecy to take on a great evil, not the great evil, and save wizarding Britain. Which is a really shitty thing for Dumbledore to do to an 11 to 18-year-old when you figure out Harry's godfather was put into jail without a trial, and Dumbledore knowingly left Harry to be abused because, for goodness sake, Dumbledore, you're wizards. You can make wards. A child's welfare is at stake. No, I'm not a fan of Dumbledore. Harry Potter is a British boarding school fantasy with a chosen one plotline and elements of dystopia with the four Hogwarts houses. In a way, it kicked off the dystopia genre popularity. It set the stage, and then Hunger Games capitalized. It had a light campy style in the beginning and slid to grim as it went further along. It starts as a middle grade by book 5 or 6, slides into YA without changing the middle grade writing style. Utterly baffling. It was the first series I'm aware that actually bridged the gap like that, and is one of the major reasons why we have young adult sections today, along with Twilight and Hunger Games and Divergent and so on. Before Harry Potter, young adult was not really a thing. So, if Harry Potter is a MMORPG, it's King's Isle's Wizard 101, which actually has a pretty decent core set of core game mechanics to include combat, housing, and minigames. And if you actually did enough quizzes over 8 weeks and got all 100 gems, you could open up areas of the games very slowly for free. Star Stable has a genre problem. It can't decide if it's contemporary portal fantasy, or horror science fiction, or thriller science fantasy, or even some elements of steampunk. And while the story, in my opinion, rests solidly in the young adult target market, the marketing for the game is generic and also aimed at middle grade. Star Stable's story is nothing like Harry Potter. Not in tone, not in genre, and since they're stripping the Chosen One plot out, there isn't even that to compare. Star Stable doesn't have a fantasy tagline element to it. Adventure with friends is not really a fantasy tagline to encourage you to have a second life in the game. Adventure with friends is every MMO ever. Open world games are by definition adventure games where you go out and explore the map and have experience with and without your friends. You have to have more than that to be a point of difference in your advertising. The website currently says, a horse game full of adventures. I mean, as long as you're under level 21, sure, I guess. Horse game doesn't cut it either. Mounts are extremely common now in MMOs. In fact, World of Warcraft players are fed up because Activision is having Blizzard turn it into World of Mounts. Oh, how the shoe is on the other foot. Everyone wants to go to Hogwarts because everyone wants to be a wizard. Everyone loves My Little Pony because friendship is magic. Girls love Barbie because Barbie can be anything. Here is the main issue with comparing Star Stable to Harry Potter. Harry Potter had a dedicated plotline. Go to wizarding school, learn magic, solve mystery of why Voldemort wants to kill Harry, defeat evil. And it's pretty apparent from the very first chapter. In Star Stable, it doesn't seem to be one. At least, not anymore. We show up to camp thinking it's a normal horse camp. We have no real reason to be there. It used to be win competitions, get into exclusive school. Then they took that out because honestly, they never even made a passing lip service to that in the story. I mean, that's actually something that should have started with Herman, and they forgot. And then it became, girl who is special, are you her? And then they took that out. Now it's, there's a bunch of horses you can bond to. Which ones will you choose? Like, this is horse Pokemon. We meet Justin. Oh dear, the fake male protag. Learn about GED. And for no reason whatsoever, we end up saving the stables, even though it's not our problem. Justin can ride, and getting the deed only to have some ghostly rider try to take it. Yeah, we have no personal stakes in this save the stable plot. It just happens. And then for no reason whatsoever plot-wise, we just leave Moorland Camp and stables to explore the rest of Jorvik and meet all the other NPCs, becoming their patsies and errand runners, and being dragged into this Keepers of Adine versus Dark Core conflict, where the Druids have us do some really shady things, which aren't presented as wrong. Becca and I have talked about this, and we can't even remember the early events of the game in the same way. She thinks we went to give the Baroness something as a favor for Thomas, and the Baroness was busy. We had to work at the stables to get her attention. I don't remember that at all. I remember working at the stables and meeting Sabine, who had give Justin a letter that caused him to become mind-controlled, and he ran off to Dark Core. I don't remember why we were working at Silverglade in the first place other than there was a yellow exclamation point. There wasn't a big enough external plot point for it to stick in my brain. The reason I probably don't remember it is because the important events of the plot, it has fallen into the crack of, oh, you were an errand girl and you are everyone's errand girl. So it's really hard to remember or know what errand is actually plot important versus clean up the pigeon poop. Once you shut down Mr. Campbell and get the gardens done, basically, the Baroness just drops out of the story, which is really, really weird. Since she's the major power of the area, she is the only one with the authority in Silverglade Barony, basically that's what Silverglade is, to take on Mr. Campbell and Dark Core with the power of the Jorvik Rangers, the only real law authority we've met behind her, and do so legally. In fact, in my fan fiction, Completely Harmless, once you've gained the trust of the Baroness, which comes while you're still fixing up everything, she's the one going, okay, we're going to take on Dark Core at Valedale, once you bring it to her attention, and place an important role in rescuing Justin. You tell John I'm coming for him. Old lady smile and patting up the cheek. When you know she's not dealing with Silverglade family drama between Aaron and Anastasia. Man, wasted opportunities for family drama between the children in the canon game. And on top of this, canonically, you are an errand girl for everybody in the game. The game is extremely front-loaded with quests. They've taken out clocks, thus messing up the throttling. You spend the first few weeks running around everywhere, doing everything, and can get up to a pretty high level fairly quickly. It's overwhelming, and due to their tendency to take out quests and the inability of a game mechanic that would allow us to replay quests, neither Becca nor I can go into the game, replay, and find out who is right. At least not without spending more money. And you have no idea if the SSO ride-through on WordPress or the Let's Play on YouTube are still accurate. And I'm going to say no because they took out the cracks, which had a mini-game attached to it, to put in the soul riding instead. So I have no idea what is going on anymore. We have no personal stakes in this plot. We've been given no Hogwarts house, or in this case, magic circle, to belong to, and apparently we're no longer the reincarnation of a dean, so even the Chosen One plot is no longer in play. Basically, we had no reason to leave summer camp other than maybe we needed to find an inn, because that summer camp is really devoid of cabins and dorms and summer camp things like classes and dining halls and a schedule of our time. I mean, they already gave us the free horse, so we have no need to buy a horse. Being an errand girl, well, we're everyone's errand girl, so that's not enough external pressure to keep us away from camp. The conflict of a dean versus Garnark. If we aren't a dean, we have absolutely no reason to give a shit. And the four girls we're supposed to be bonding with really don't need us or need our help, because we haven't really done anything effective they couldn't do by themselves. When we were saving the widow, we didn't even play the dang harp. No, Lisa did that, and we just sort of followed her, maybe holding the shard of the light of a dean. Linda could have done that. We can't open portals like a Sunrider, we can't heal things like a Star Rider, we can't look into the past or the future or through illusions like a Moonrider, and we can't even defend ourselves like a Lightning Rider. There may be four classes, but they mean absolutely nothing to the player because we can't choose one of them to be our character class and learn skills to go with the character class. Oh, and we can't even turn the one skill we've learned, Wild Whispering, on and off to find Starbreed horses. Wait, they can be any breed now? I'm confused. You think they need some Jorvik Warmblood or Jorvik Wild Horseblood somewhere. There are things that feel like capitulation to the game base. This any horse breed can be a soul steed is one of them. And this is why the starter horses need to be the prettiest horses in the game and the fastest, so the players actually bond to them. The players will buy every other horse breed because those horse breeds might be horses they already own in real life or they love those breeds. The Jorvik Warmblood is their made-up soul star breed, so they need to find a reason why the players would bond to this horse the most, and the only reason you've got is pretty and a few stats. Remember what I said about this not being an RPG? Well, this is why it's not an RPG. There might be factions of light versus dark and character magic circle classes and writing disciplines, but we can't choose any of it, so they might as well not exist. So, the magical world bit. Harry Potter's magical world lives behind a veil hidden from regular people, and in the Harry Potter games there are a lot of spells to cast to help you solve the mysteries. Look, I've played Lego Harry Potter. Regular people in Jorvik seem to have selective memory problems. It's pretty obvious that magic exists, but they seem willfully blind to it. There's a huge difference inside the fantasy genre when you decide to make the veil non-existent. There are different rules, and we're lacking a bunch of spells to cast to help us solve mysteries. Oh, wait, the Fripp, the Jorvik wild horses, tentacle monster Garnock, the generals, some of the Dark Riders, they're aliens. A dean is an alien. Wait, are we fantasy or sci-fi? Oh, when Bonnie did cloning for Dark Core and merged it with technologies, is this steampunk now, or cyberpunk, or even dieselpunk? Huh. Plus, the four circles of Dean could be dystopian depending. I mean, they haven't assigned personality traits yet, like the Hogwarts houses, but it could only be a matter of time. So, Star Stable is trying to be everything, and as such, they are nothing. It's confusing to the player. There are no genre conventions they are following except other than common horse girl convention of mean girls and saving the stable. Except, oh, wait. Loretta is no longer mean. Until she is. So this means there's no way you can predict where the story is going because one, there'd have to be a story they're putting into the game, and two, there is no set story structure they're pulling from you can discern from any particular genre. This is bad. This means there's no real foreshadowing going on that I can see, and the players can't figure out what is important and what isn't, and so they have to try to remember everything, and it turns into trope soup, and it just doesn't work. If there is no foreshadowing, There is no emotional payoff when the player gets to that part of the story and can either relish they were right or groan they didn't see the twist coming. Good writing leaves enough clues for the person enjoying the story to be able to put things together even in hindsight. Bad writing leaves no clues and throws twists in out of left field and hopes to shock the reader or player. Rushed writing is, well, what we've got. Come on. Herman's rescue was nothing more than an excuse to put in a race. Game mechanics over story, am I right? Remember what Prime Emerald Era said. When you're angry at the characters, the story is well written. When you're angry at the writers, it is not. See Game of Thrones Season 8. Okay, so John Lingate made, and later Lincoln adapted, a very important quote. You can please some of the people all the time. You can please all the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all the time. Star Stable is trying their hardest to please everyone, and when you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. You cannot have a target of all females ages 8 to 99. It just doesn't work that way. It's too broad, and your story becomes bland oatmeal when it should be intriguing and exciting, with them trying to figure out the mysteries and the game giving answers in a timely manner in large portions. And they're recycling the same plot over and over, and it's not even in the genre they want to compare, aka the kidnappings, aka the thriller part of their story. Harry Potter was not kidnapped. Ginny Weasley technically wasn't kidnapped. She was possessed. In Book 7, they're captured for a lovely Deus Ex Machina escape sequence by Dobby. Man, what a wasted plot point for Draco. To get an important plot piece of information, apparently Rowling wrote herself into a corner on. And well, Luna is kidnapped, but no one seems to care. However, I've pointed out, we've had at least 8 kidnappings in this story so far. Justin, Linda, Justin again, Lisa, Anne, Concord, Starshine, Butterfly, Saga, Herman, Night Dust. That's 11. Am I missing anyone? I feel like I'm missing someone. Wait, Jarlaheim Mayer, who we've never even met. That's on top of the kidnappings in Starshine Legacy, where they kidnapped Starshine, James, and Concord's soul. Huh? After those 3, the whole kidnapping plot should have been thrown out entirely as being overdone in the story. It's a muddled mess. Genres are defined because genres have rules. There are limitations instilled on books and worlds, so the author knows to stay in a box for a certain marketing. There are rules, so author can't just do anything they want in the story. That way, they don't throw everything into the bag like Star Stable is doing and end up in a world where anything can happen, but at the same time, nothing makes sense, because for plot and conflict to happen, there has to be things the characters can't do and can do at certain times, and not for plot's sake. Alex! So wait, remember Barbie and Barbie Can Be Anything? Whenever Mattel needed to make a new story with Barbie to make a new doll, they would make her a princess, or a mermaid, or a veterinarian. But they do have limits. Like, they don't turn Barbie into anything scary. Well, when Mattel decided they wanted to make a new doll line, they were going for a new message, which was embrace yourself. So they made Monster High, with the monsters standing in for different types of people. And every ghoul was different, but every ghoul was cool. So there was very much a science-based element to it because the main character was Frankie Stein, a female take on the original science fiction book Frankenstein. Frankie was discovering herself since she was 16 days old. You know, the werewolf loved fashion and wanted to be a fashion designer. Then the vampire was cute and girly. There was the sea monster ocean nymph, aka Nereid ghoul, who loved swimming. Eventually they introduced aliens, and they could do that because science fiction. But when they decided to choose another story to make a sister line based on fairy tales, they chose this tagline of royals and rebels, a type of your parents don't determine your destiny, you can choose your fate type of thing. Now introducing factions into their world, but it was based on magic and what magic could do, almost anything, versus what science could do, much more limited. There were clear and defined rules, and when they decided to change the rules, they made a new product line. They didn't mix their sci-fi and horror monsters with their fairy tale fantasy people, outside of Cupid for some reason. Everyone needs love, I guess. Because Star Stable has everything from aliens, sci-fi, to magical witches, fantasy, and even vampires, horror. It's difficult to know what the rules actually are as they try to be a science fiction horror fantasy thriller. And yes, you can be science fantasy like Star Wars. Star Wars had rules, and you know a tagline. Skywalker family drama. Okay, I made that up. I am not wrong though. The fantasy taglines were usually the titles A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, etc. It did have a core value of hope. No core value means no fantasy tagline. No fantasy tagline means we don't have a personal stake in this plot. And no personal stake in the conflict means the story is happening to us rather than the player taking charge and actively participating in the story. You are in a role-playing game, in a railroaded story you can't change, and your character isn't the main character, has learned no skills, and she can't get out of it. It's like a nightmare. An absolute nightmare. It's player versus a power greater than themselves, aka God, but being treated like a disaster movie. Player versus nature. We have a plot-driven conflict versus a character-driven conflict. The character has had no input into this plot. The aliens are attacking and she's reacting, and it's been 10 years. We need to rise up and take control, take action, act instead of react. But to do this, we have to have a stake in the story. We actually have to be a dean and care about Jorvik. We have to get some skills that aren't run away. We players may care about Jorvik simply because we're invested in this game and this plot back from Starshine Legacy. It's not the same as having a story reason for our character to save the world, even if that story reason is a simplistic, chosen one by prophecy plot, which is what they had and are throwing out. This means our character needs to be the leader of the Soul Riders. It means we have to become friends and earn their trust. Thus we need to spend time with them, none of which we've really done outside of Alex and a bit with Linda. We keep being told we're these great friends, but there are no story quests where we're doing stuff together other than saving people occasionally to bear this out, especially after Anne and Lisa are rescued, which in total took us 8 years. Holidays don't count, as it's debatable if they're canon or not. The light ride doesn't count. The light ride and the red string ride are huge examples of them telling us we're friends. The circle isn't working or training together to do important things. And since they gave us a horse in Moorland stable, because I guess we saved the day and Thomas is grateful, we had no reason to leave Moorland even to get a horse. They changed Loretta's personality, so we don't have to leave because she's pissing us off. The story has no inciting character plot conflict point to get it going. There is no basic internal or external pressure point for us to proceed past Moorland once the stable is saved. Good stories, even back in 2011, had both external and internal plot conflicts. We just leave because there's a yellow exclamation point over Steve's head to tell us to. And then he tells us about his missing cat that is still missing. Or Thomas gives us an errand to run to the Baroness as a favor to him. Like, really? You owe us favors, buddy. A lot of them. So, because this game has no core value and no fantasy tagline, then as I pointed out in my previous videos, there can be no game mechanics to support these values or taglines, which is probably why there are no actual game mechanics other than movement and a few wandering minigames and races in this game. Outside of maybe the engine can't support them, but I don't know if that's true or not. If this game was about bonding with your horse, then there should be horse bonding mechanics. If this game was about a dean and magic and saving the world, there should be magic mechanics. If this game was about racing, then there would be a championship plotline and better race mechanics like the ones in the seasonal games. While they were simple, they were actually more complex than what we've got. Is this problem fixable? Not without remastering the game, because you have to put this internal external pressure to leave within the demo time of the plot. There has to come a point in the demo time where the player is given a choice or needs a reason to leave Moorland Stable in the Fort Pinta area permanently. From that point, you can pay for the game because you'd have a reason to continue the story outside of, Oh no, there are exclamation points in areas I can't access. In my fanfic, completely harmless, I applied the pressure point internally of the character not liking Loretta, and externally of the characters wanting their own horses that weren't camp horses, as Thomas couldn't sell the camp ones. Really, what is Thomas doing selling us a camp horse? You don't do that. There is a limited number of well-trained camp horses. This had Justin tell them about Baroness Silverglade, who is the primary power in the area and has most of the horses. So you go visit her, and thus kick-starting a chain of events to earn her trust, so she'll work with you to push back against GED and Dark Horror, which she has a personal stake in the matter, being Justin is her grandson. It is very important to earn the trust of Baroness Silverglade. And everyone else around the area and all those side quests I've glossed over because many of the areas simply don't have enough and they weren't paying me to fix their story. I needed to practice something and Star Stable was convenient. You keep the player as the reincarnation of a dean, and then have the player being pushed into being this leader that Linda and Alex accept because the player is good at doing stuff beneficial to the area and has the trust of the Baroness. The player plays the harp, the player can use the light of a dean, the player organizes and does the plan to get Justin back, the player learns from the start how to make keystones by first learning forging from Conrad, then learning how to do keystones from Magnus. It's an important part of the plan. It might be different if the player wasn't a stranger to Jorvik. Being a local would engender a lot more trust than being a stranger. The basic story makes us a stranger, so I'm not trying to mess with it that much. In Harry Potter, it's impressed upon the audience that only Harry can save the day, because Voldemort chose him and fulfilled the prophecy, and Dumbledore manipulated events. In Star Stable, well, now anyone can save the day, apparently. And while Fripp might be manipulating events, I don't trust that little alien rodent. There's no reason for us to be involved when anyone else can do it. Alright, my lovelies. Once again, I'm going to take a break here because nobody wants to listen to me yammer for over an hour. So we'll continue in the next video on our analysis of how Star Stable is not Harry Potter. Take care of yourself, bless, stay safe, and as always, my lovelies, I'll see you in the next video.